Hello and welcome to Crime Watch Daily Updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. This is one of those tragic cases where meeting someone on a dating app led to murder. 40-year-old Shawn Arthur worked long hours as a water technician in New Orleans. After a failed engagement, he was planning to move back to Missouri to be closer to his family. He even had an appointment with his lawyer set for February 25th of 2017 to discuss breaking the lease on his New Orleans apartment. But when Shawn didn't call his dad after that appointment, his dad got worried. And when he called his son's phone, a stranger answered and said that the phone was found at a local cemetery. So his father called the police to do a welfare check. And when the deputies arrived, they found Shawn dead on his mattress. Some of his belongings, including his car, his wallet, and his TV, were missing. An autopsy determined that Shawn died from acute pancreatitis and had a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit. Investigators called this an accidental death. But what they found out later was that Shawn had recently met a woman named Dominique Berry through a social media app called Meet Me. After starting their own investigation, Shawn's family learned that Dominique was a prostitute and that she and her boyfriend had a scheme where they would target men on dating apps by meeting up with the victims, drugging them, and then stealing their belongings. Their crime spree spanned several states, from California to Tennessee. In 2019, Berry pleaded guilty to conspiracy and identity theft. Her boyfriend was charged in 2020 with sex trafficking and identity theft. And in May of 2022, he pleaded guilty to federal prostitution-related charges and wire fraud. Let's take a look back at this shocking case.
Shawn Arthur was a college wrestling champ whose true passions were football and family.
Bob, tell me about Shawn.
Shawn kind of struggled in school, doing his schoolwork, but he worked extra hard to succeed. Shawn was an individual that always had a great smile. Shawn never missed a card at Christmas time or Mother's Day, cards. Just never did.
When Shawn was offered a temp assignment on a flood project in the New Orleans area, he dived right in. He also fell head over heels in love with the local woman and got engaged. Sadly, it didn't last long, and a broken-hearted Shawn moved into this gated apartment complex in Metairie.
They were engaged. Unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Did you have reservations about the engagement?
No. We taught our boys right from wrong, and it was up, or any decisions they made about life is up to them.
Shawn's father, Bob, says after the breakup, Shawn had no reason to stay in New Orleans and planned to return home to Kansas City. But first, he had to finish his job.
Shawn was working way over 100 and some hours every 2 weeks. And he had told his mother he was thrilled because he was going to have his first weekend off in a long, long time.
It was Friday night, and Shawn told his dad he was looking forward to having a little fun. Tragically, it was the last time Bob would ever talk to his son.
When did you realize that something was wrong?
Shawn is very punctual. Where I had made arrangements for Shawn to speak with an attorney the Saturday morning, to see about getting out of his lease. He said that he would call around 10:30 in the morning. That call never came.
Bob says he burned up the cell towers calling Shawn's phone. Finally, someone answered, and it wasn't Shawn.
The guy said that he found Shawn's phone in one of the local cemeteries. And based on that phone call, I called the sheriff's department and asked them to do a wellness check.
A Jefferson Parish sheriff's deputy finds Shawn's door unlocked. According to the deputy's report, he sees Shawn's dead body, naked from the waist down, lying on this air mattress with no visible signs of trauma. On the floor, there's a shot glass, an empty beer bottle, and an empty capsule casing. More bottles in the trash, and white powder on a table. In the bathroom, he photographs an empty whiskey bottle and takes it to the lab for analysis. The deputy says the circumstances he observed appeared to be unusual because the kitchen cabinets were open and there was minimal furniture in the apartment. He also couldn't find Shawn's wallet, 2 cell phones, and his truck, so he called in the homicide detectives. They conducted a thorough investigation, including getting the phone companies to ping Shawn's cell phone. Bob then gets the phone call that would shatter his life forever.
How did that hit you, that phone call?
You know, how would it hit anyone? It was tough, but anyhow, we did what we had to do.
Now Bob, a retired insurance investigator, heads to Louisiana with his wife Linda. He snaps his own pictures inside Shawn's apartment, and it appears to be ransacked. He finds even more empty capsules and a spot of blood on the molding. Bob and Linda meet Jefferson Parish Sheriff's detectives and learn the shocking details.
Just right off the bat, they indicated that Shawn was having a party, a large party. A lot of alcohol was apparent, and that drugs were apparent. And of course, we immediately said, "No, this can't be. That's not our son."
That wasn't like him? To
No.
be consuming copious amounts of alcohol or using drugs?
No, Shawn was definitely not a heavy drinker, and Shawn definitely was not a drug user, did not use drugs, period.
But the coroner's report tells a conflicting tale. The autopsy states Shawn died from acute hemorrhagic pancreatitis in association with ethanol use. In other words, alcohol poisoning. The coroner determines his death was an accident, and after a lengthy investigation of the forensic analysis, sheriff's investigators agree. But despite all the evidence, Huffington Post crime reporter David Lohr says something doesn't add up.
I took a look at the case, and just reading the police report alone, it just didn't make sense.
What jumped out at you?
Here you had a guy who was deceased, found in his apartment. They were calling it accidental, but then, you know, you have where there's items were stolen from his apartment.
But investigators found no compelling evidence of theft, even though the engagement ring Shawn's ex-fiancée had recently returned to him was missing, as well as his wallet and credit cards.
The detective has video from a Walmart and a convenience store showing 3 black males and a female using his debit card.
And surveillance images from the apartment show someone driving Shawn's truck out of the front gate at 4:13 a.m. The truck was eventually found some 2 months later on a street nowhere near Shawn's apartment.
And also, there were 2,500 miles on that vehicle that we're aware of.
2,500 miles in addition
to what was on there.
So your son turns up dead, and someone other than your son is using his vehicle.
Apparently so.
But the report from the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office determined Shawn's death was not a result of foul play and stated this investigation is closed. Bob is not convinced, so he hires a series of private investigators, including Jane Holmes, to help him piece the puzzle together.
Nothing added up as an accidental death because you've got empty pills, his truck is missing, his wallet is missing, his card is being used at Walmart. This was not an accidental death.
Results come back from that whiskey bottle the deputy found in the bathroom. The fingerprints are traced back to this woman. She goes by the name Desiree. Cops say he found her that Friday night on a dating app.
This is a lady who had a pretty long history with law enforcement.
So it's not a choir girl.
No, definitely not choir girl.
Choir girls definitely don't dress like this. Investigators soon learned that Desiree is also known as Jasmine, Destiny, and Mary Jane. But New Orleans cops know her by her legal name, Dominique Berry. And you probably won't see this official police photo on her dating profile. Mom always said never let a stranger in the house. But Shawn Arthur apparently summoned one with a dating app.
These apps, these dating apps, these hookup apps, and it goes terribly wrong.
I mean, they're luring people in off of these dating apps. It's got to stop.
Shawn, who a coworker says frequented various meetup sites, allowed a stranger, a prostitute, who calls herself Desiree, into his apartment. It would be the last night of his life. According to the coroner, Shawn died from alcohol poisoning. Jefferson Parish Sheriff's deputy said there were no visible signs of trauma. No foul play was apparent, and after an exhaustive investigation, closed the case.
Did you buy that?
No, because Shawn, like I said, Shawn was not a heavy drinker at all.
So Shawn's father, Bob, a retired insurance investigator, mounted his own investigation and recruited a team of detectives to go over the official sheriff's reports.
They also looked at the last phone calls that were made from Shawn's phone, and those came back to a lady named Jasmine, which they come to find out was actually an alias used by Dominique.
Dominique Berry, aka Jasmine, aka Desiree. Yes, Desiree. She has many other aliases as well. New Orleans cops say she is a known prostitute with a long rap sheet.
I mean, just right there. Very suspicious.
Oh yeah, highly suspicious, highly. Police knew of all her prior arrests. She had been arrested before for robbing people, committing petty thefts.
Huffington Post crime reporter David Lohr investigated the case. He says Shawn's death unwittingly revealed what could be an alleged cross-country crime spree targeting men on dating apps, like the claims from this man in Sacramento, California.
I was hurting for real. I almost died.
We're calling him Hugh. He wants his identity kept secret. He claims he arranged for Dominique in her guise as Nurse Desiree to be a companion for his girlfriend.
She was posing as a traveling nurse. So I said, hey, come on over, meet her. She's in medical field. Maybe you guys get along. Maybe it'll tune her up and make our relationship better.
Hugh says Dominique arrived an hour before his girlfriend got home. He doesn't remember much after that.
I think my second beer, she had already put something in it. And I don't know what, because I have no clue what happened after my second beer.
Hugh says his girlfriend found him unconscious on the floor. He recalls waking up in the hospital the next day.
They wanted to keep me in the hospital longer because they said, you know, you have been clinically dead for a minute and we want to look at your, brain.
He claims after that alleged encounter, his wallet is a little lighter. He filed a police report claiming Dominique stole his credit cards.
She's brutal. She's a bad person. No remorse, neither. Left me to die.
Sacramento cops put out an arrest warrant for Desiree, aka Dominique Berry.
Where is she now?
She is currently sitting in jail in Georgia.
For what?
She's facing charges of identity fraud, and then there's also a possession with intent to distribute marijuana.
Dominique and her alleged pimp, Randy Schneck, are accused of scamming a 53-year-old man from outside Atlanta who contacted her on a meetup site. They both pleaded not guilty and deny all charges.
According to her, he started getting her involved in prostitution and hooking her up with escort services in New Orleans, and that she would basically make money for him. She was his bank.
Private investigator Jane Holmes and her team went to the Cobb County Jail and spoke extensively with Dominique.
It was basically an online dating scam. They would attract people online who were looking for companionship or erotica or a date, and she opened up. She told me how they would lure their victims.
Dominique describes in detail what she does when she meets a potential victim.
My job is to hang out with them, get them drunk. We drink half a bottle of beer. That's when you put the pill in because it won't fizz over. Then I'll do like a chug game or something like that. Once they start to get sleepy, I will let them know. I'll text DP.
Dominique says DP means drop pill, the message to Schneck that it was safe to enter the house.
What was the biggest amount of cash you ever found on a mark?
$13,000 cash.
But in Shawn's case, Dominique claims she barely remembers him.
So I held up a picture of Shawn Arthur, and I said, "Do you recognize this man?" And she just looked through the glass at me and shook her head. Then I showed her some crime scene photos of him deceased in his apartment, and I said, "This is Shawn Arthur." And she pulled back and she went, "What's that got to do with me?" I said, "Well, he died last February. Your fingerprints are in his apartment." And she goes, "What does that have to do with me?"
Do you remember how you met him?
It had to be on a dating site.
Do you remember talking to Shawn at all? Or?
I remember, I know I talked to them because I had to call them. I had to hear their voices before I would go to their house.
But one thing Dominique remembers clearly.
She said, I didn't know he died. I said, he did.
Dominique says Shawn was definitely still alive when she left the apartment.
He was not deceased when I left. He was snoring very loudly when I left.
And about that man in Sacramento who claims Dominique drugged and robbed him as her alias Desiree, she says it wasn't her.
There's no way I would have, because one thing I don't do is, like, if it's more than one person going to be there, I don't do that.
Neither Dominique nor Randy have been charged with anything in connection with Shawn's death. The Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office has never named them suspects or persons of interest, as there is no evidence they took the missing items, his wallet, a ring, and a truck.
If there was anything you could say to Shawn's parents, is there anything you would say to them?
Tell them that I apologize and I'm going to make sure they get justice for their son no matter what I have to do.
As a result of Bob Arthur's independent investigation, the Jefferson Parish Coroner has changed the cause of death from an accident to undetermined.
And so they held what they call a consensus conference where, the different medical examiners get together. They reviewed everything that we had uncovered along with the original autopsy and everything. And they decided to come back with undetermined.
But Bob and Linda are determined to get to the bottom of what happened to their son.
What's your message to, if you have one, to Dominique Berry and Randy Schneck?
I want to see justice served, and that leave it up to a judge and a jury to decide what the outcome is.